Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. We're so excited that you're tuning in or watching this recording. My name is Tash. I am the program director with No More Under. We are a nonprofit based in Bellevue, Washington, and we are focused on water safety awareness and drowning prevention. With us today, we have a super exciting conversation. So we have Shazek joining us. Shazek is the founder of No More Under. So really excited to have Shazek. We have Maritza and Natalie, who are both incredible swimmers. They have paved the way through their sport. I used to be a swimmer as well, and actually we have 3 SEC swimmers here, which is really fun, and I couldn't help myself but make sure I had my Auburn cup with me.
Man, Tosh,
I know. Where's your Georgia stuff?
Yeah,
There you go.
Here's some Georgia stuff.
There you go. I love that. Natalie, you got a new Gators merch floating around.
I actually have nothing around me, but I just am a hybrid because I was just at Georgia and now I'm at Florida. So I feel content where I'm sitting right now.
Good. Yeah, totally. That's fair enough. Well, so we have these amazing swimmers joining us. I did not compete at the level that they did, but I'm very much like an excited fangirl today to be having the opportunity to speak with both of these incredible swimmers. We have so many people joining us from around the country. We've got a bunch of different states saying hello, which is awesome. We are just honored to have you both here and to have a little bit of your time. So thank you so much for being able to provide us some time to share your journey, your stories, your insight, and I'll pass it to Shazek if she wants to jump on in.
Yeah, thanks, Tosh. So yeah, I am super excited as well for you all to be here. And really, it was a focus for us at No More Under to, during Black History Month, call out all of us, right, who aren't in the space. We've spoken to swim instructors. We've been highlighting Olympians, which I think we probably illegally used some of your pictures and on our Instagram, but also just want to make sure that we have the good discussions that we need to have because swimming for us, you know, as Black folks is a little, we're still getting there. And so for you all to be where you are is an inspiration. And so I would love for each of you, if you don't mind, just like a really brief history of how you even got involved in swimming, because, you know, quite a few folks never even make it to a pool. So what was your journey to get to where you are? Maritza, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So my start was pretty interesting. I was actually diagnosed with scoliosis. So my back was about 25 degrees off center. It was curved in an S. I was about this close to having to have surgery. And my doctors actually recommended to my parents for me to either try gymnastics or swimming, something that kind of worked on the flexibility of my back on top of the therapy that I was doing outside, just in my everyday day. So my mom found at that time, I did not know how to swim. This was about 6 years old, didn't know how to swim. I loved the water, but again, could not do a single stroke or get from one end of the pool to the other. It was just one of those things where I was fearless in the water, loved to splash around and play in it. And she just found a guy who was giving lessons in his backyard, and nothing fancy, just a guy who had a rope from one end of the pool to the other and taught us basic water safety skills. And that's kind of how I got started. And then by the end of my summer lessons, so after a couple of weeks, like I fell in love with the sport. And I just said to my mom, you know, I don't want lessons to end, like what's next? And so she did a little bit of research and found a swim team for me to join. And this is when I was in Puerto Rico. So I was born in San Juan, Puerto Rico. My parents are from Guyana, and they were just in Puerto Rico when they had me. And so they, you know, surrounded by water, go to the beach all the time with my mom and my dad and my brothers. And so it was just a natural fit. And from then on, I just couldn't stay away from the water. It was my favorite thing to do.
And how old were you when you started? Did you say
I was about 6 years old when I started swim lessons, but competitive swim about 7.
Okay. Wow. Okay. What about you, Natalie?
I started swimming, I think, I don't really remember when, I would say maybe 4 or so, but our neighbors had a backyard pool. It wasn't huge, but it had like a diving board in it. And I would say it was probably like between 10 to 15 yards long. And so in the summer, my mom used to so we had such a great relationship with them. We could just like open the gate and walk through. And so my mom would always go with my sister and I next door, and my cousin would come for the summer sometimes. So we would always be in the pool. And I don't know if I ever like got lessons from my mom. I kind of just played around so much that I eventually learned how to float and how to swim. And so then I did lessons. I think like when I was 5 or 6, like actual lessons at the complex that's in Midland. And then started competitively swimming at 6. And my sister swam before I did, so I wanted to do whatever she did. So she's a big reason that I like wanted to go to be in competitive swimming. And so I thank her for that, because she swam, but she stopped after high school. But I think she's a big reason why I wanted to swim in the first place. And then I kind of found my own journey and like my own fit within, like, you know, without having to deal with her. So it was nice.
That's beautiful.
That's so amazing. And I feel like we should clarify that their journeys led to some incredible things. I have to highlight their successes for anyone who's joining us who is unaware of Maritza and Natalie's successes. We have 2 Olympic medalists with us right now. Again, I'm grinning like a fangirl because I was part of this sport for a while, but these 2 just were, again, just incredible achievers. And so Natalie was at the most recent Olympics 2020, but it happened in 2021 because of the challenges with COVID. Natalie was part of the 400-meter freestyle relay that got the bronze medal for the USA, which was amazing. And Maritza's medal was actually in the same event, but math on the spot, 15 years earlier, 17 years.
You're aging me.
Years. I was like, don't say years now, just say 2000. Yeah.
2004, Maritza was on the 4x100 freestyle relay as well, and they got a silver medal, which is incredible. Not even just that, both of these swimmers were in the SEC. Maritza was at Georgia. Natalie, for her collegiate career, was at Florida. Both powerhouses for swimming and have just had programs that are so successful throughout the US. Natalie and Maritza were both All-Americans so many times in the 20s for both of them, from what I recall, which is amazing. And so that means that they were qualifying for the NCAAs, which is the collegiate nationals, year after year while they were in college. And this fact is astonishing for someone who specifically only swam 100 and 200 breaststroke. Maritza won all the events from the 50 through the mile. That is mind-blowing. So just absolutely amazing. And both of these swimmers have had incredible careers. So while they started off very humbly talking about their beginnings, I just wanted to ensure that we lift them up for the achievements that they've had, because it is so incredible and so inspiring. And you've both certainly opened the door for so many additional swimmers and to see what's possible. And so just thank you and well done for your successes.
Thank you.
So I'm still curious, like I'm still kind of back then, and not taking away anything, because obviously you've accomplished so much. I'm just curious, like at what point, you know, because when I was little, I wasn't like, oh my gosh, I'm the only one, you know, like it wasn't until a certain point that like I was aware I was in a room and I was the only one. I'm just curious, like, was that a moment for you in swimming when you looked around and said, okay, I mean, I think in particular for you, Maritza, but even as I say it, Natalie, it's not like there's a ton of us. So I'm just curious if there was that moment, and if there was any, if you remember what age you were when you kind of recognized it was just you.
I mean, I would say that my upbringing was kind of unique in the fact that I lived in like an all white area. And to me, like was very headstrong when I was younger. So a lot of my realizations didn't come until I was in quarantine, honestly. And so whether that be like lack of awareness or just being like just worrying about swimming and not worrying about anything else, I think that's kind of where most of my realizations came when I was able to sit at home for 3 months and kind of review why I feel the way I feel, and trying to go through all of the emotions that were presenting themselves at that time. But no, there really wasn't a time where I looked around and I was like, there's only white people around, or I'm the only Black person around. It was always like I want to win. I want to beat this girl who's 13 and I'm 8. Like for me, it was just more of like, I want to beat the older kids. And I mean, I can't really judge myself back then because I was 8, 12. I was an age grouper. So, you know, now that I'm older and I look back on some of my experiences, I'm able to review and be like, yeah, that was probably because we were Black. Like I do remember going to, when I was 12, my dad and mom sat me down because I was, basically I'd outgrown my area. So it was time for me to go to Dallas and go to Houston and all the bigger cities in Texas and race. And so, you know, with that comes money, and with that comes, you know, the dedication and everything. So we decided to start going to these bigger cities. So, you know, it was like maybe the first or second meet that I had gone. We went to a meet in Dallas, and it was just my dad and me most of the time, and my coach. And so my dad would always be in the stands. And I remember seeing him, like, you know, the first day was just completely by himself. Like no one wanted to say anything to him. I remember in the warm down pool, I don't care. I'll go up and say hello to anyone. Like I'm a very bold person, but I remember none of the girls wanted to speak to me, but I just thought it was because I was new and all of them knew each other. But it was like after I had won maybe a couple events, or maybe it was like, you know, a couple meets later, you know, where we're at another meet in Dallas or we're in Houston, where they got familiar and they were okay with us, did I start to see people speaking to my dad and like wanting to invite us to dinner and things like that. Like, oh, you guys are like good Black people. You're not going to cause any problems. You guys just, you know, you guys are just like us type of thing. That's the vibe that I got. But yeah, that was really the only instance I can remember, because when I went off to college, I went to such a diverse place that, again, it wasn't a thought on my mind, because I had people from different islands. There was people from different countries. So I never was looking around like I'm the only one, until like, honestly, like a year and a half ago. So I would think that it's just, everybody has their own journey as well.
For sure. That's amazing. I would love to comment on it, but I want to give Maritza a moment too.
Yeah, you know, and it's, you know, like Natalie said, everybody's journey is different. I think for me, growing up in Puerto Rico, everybody was from diverse background. Like it was a norm when I walked on the pool deck and on my first team. But then my family moved over to Tampa, Florida when I was about 9 years old. And I definitely noticed. I walked on a pool deck with about 150 kids, and me and my brother were one of a handful of other Black swimmers that were on that team. So it was definitely something that I noticed. And as my career started to get better, like I definitely wasn't the best swimmer when I walked on the team. Like that was something that I had to work towards and really train hard for, but it did start early. So by the time I was 10 years old, I was starting to bring home some medals and win some trophies. And at that time too, there was definitely those parents that were not happy that I was beating their children. And I do remember an instance when I was about 9 or 10 years old that, you know, under her breath, this mom just said, "What are you doing here at the pool? Like you should be at the basketball court or on the track and field." Like basically just calling me out and saying, I don't belong here. And I think at that time, it definitely didn't register like that was messed up. You know, I was 10 years old. I was like, that's a weird comment, you know, and I just kind of brushed it off, never told anybody about it. And it wasn't until like years later that the same thing happened to my brother. Like I ended up talking to my brother's a coach as well in Florida. His name's Justin Correa, and he always has me come talk to his team. And there was this one time where we talked to his team together. And I shared, you know, my experiences as well. And then my brother, sure enough, chimed in and said the same thing happened to him. You know, he wasn't one of the top athletes, top swimmers either, but he definitely had, you know, some gold medals and some ribbons under his belt. And there was definitely people that were not happy that he was doing the same thing that I was. So definitely started early. I mean, even through college, at Georgia, I was one of the few on the team. So I was the only female for 3 years. Yeah, 3 years. I was the only Black female on the team. And at that time too, like I knew the statistics, right? Like I knew that there hadn't been anybody of color making the Olympic team. And I had already had aspirations to making the Olympic team at that point. So definitely have a lot of stories of just instances where I was definitely called out or treated differently because of the color of my skin throughout my entire career. But it's not something that definitely held me back. It was something that, you know, I just realized I knew it was happening.
Yeah.
And I was determined to make my dreams come true. And then when I made the Olympic team in 2004, I became the first Black female to make a US Olympic team. So at that point, that was my opportunity to start to build a platform for a bigger cause that was beyond me. I was definitely proud to be the first. Definitely didn't want to be the last. And you guys see Natalie here. I mean, we're in 2021 and we continue to have representation on the Olympic swim team every year since I made it. So super proud of that moment. And then now it's like, it's our purpose, right? Like we're out there to ensure that next generation that looks like us is inspired to do the things that we did and even do greater things than what we have done. And just knowing that in 2004, 70% of African-American children didn't know how to swim. 64% of Hispanic children didn't know how to swim. And now we're here in 2022 and those numbers are going down. It's now 64% of African-American children and 45% for Hispanics. And a lot of people are like, well, that's not a big difference. But honestly, that translates to millions of kids who are now learning how to swim. You think about different programs. You guys see my shirt. I see a lot of our swimmers on here. So I'm a member of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated. We have a partnership with USA Swimming called Swim 1922. And that initiative is essentially understanding like why are these stats so high? What is it that we can do to help our communities? Our purpose and our mission at Sigma Gamma Rho is to support and be active in our communities. And this is no better way than to address the drowning rates and educate our communities about why it's so important to learn how to swim. I mean, you guys are no strangers to those statistics either. And it's because of programs like No More Under and Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority doing their Swim 1922 partnerships. And there's so many others that are out there just continuing to raise that awareness of why it's so important. I mean, you think about that generational trauma, the lack of access to pools. When you think about competitive swim, even it's not something that has always been part of the conversation in our Black communities. So that's definitely something that's been a passion of mine is let's talk about water safety. But I would love to see more competitive swimmers as well. I can also I'm full of stats, guys.
Me too, trust. I'm holding them back.
USA Swimming has 350,000 members. 1.8% is the Black representation. And to know that Natalie and I have been through at the elite level, I can tell you I've been to several meets and I'm definitely seeing an increase, but there's still more that we could do, right? And what inspires a generation is really making sure that the previous generation is showing that representation is continuing to stay in front of the game. I retired 2007, 2008, right before Olympic trials in 2008. I had blown out both my shoulders, but I'm still here. I'm still here sharing my story and showing off my medal. Like I actually have my medal on me and just making sure that it offers a little bit of inspiration and being able to do events with Natalie as well and Simone and Leah, Neil, Cullen Jones. I mean, our list is definitely growing, but that's how we're going to inspire that next generation to do competitive swim.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And, my big thing, as we are an organization about childhood swimming, I just think it should be in schools, right? Because it is such a, it's expensive, and, as you just said, Natalie, like your parents were like, hi, we're going to sit you down because we're about to like put a bunch of money into it. It's expensive, and so not everyone does have the access. So always my big fight is like, oh my gosh, can we get to the president or the vice president or a wife, like to, have that be their mission because it's a life-saving skill, right? But I agree that the representation matters. And I'm just curious as well, like, do you feel that pressure then? And Natalie, do you feel that pressure? I feel like maybe you might not, as much, but do you feel to just be still in the game and be a Black swimmer? It's such a conundrum, I feel like, of you just want to be a good swimmer, right? Like you are a woman, you are a good swimmer, but then putting the Black in front of it. But at the same time, we are Black. So I don't know. I'm kind of throwing that out as like an open question because it's an interesting one, and how you feel.
It's kind of hard to answer that just because for me, all of this is very new. I mean, this is literally like I got back at this past fall. So all of this, like me trying to find my brand and what I want to represent has been in the making now since 2018, but definitely going to the games this summer definitely expands your platform and allows you more opportunities and more resources than you had before. But I find it both overwhelming and great, and I'm very grateful at the same time if those two can coexist, because you know, I mean, in 2018, I think I went to the Black Heritage Swim Meet in DC, and like honestly, that was the first time I was around that many Black people at a swim meet. Like, it was just so many Black people, and I felt so, I was like, this is like something I've never seen before. Like, it was amazing to see, but it was just so odd, if that makes sense. But it was so amazing to see young kids and how excited they were for the swim meet. And it happens every year, so it's something that it's a Big Ten event for them. Like, they love it. And me growing up in such different, being brought up in such a different area, I had no idea that existed. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, it's, you know, there's Black people out there who are living two separate journeys to get to the same point. And I'm grateful because my parents had the resources, and, you know, going through this past summer, going through my journey as an elite swimmer, and, you know, my journey now is I've moved and I've been able to see my platform kind of settle, and like, I'm trying to decide what I want to do with it. It's really interesting to, like, you know, see the differences. There's so many variables when you're talking about teaching Black children or children of minority how to swim, because there's so many more variables with them. And one of them is resources. And that's like a really big thing that I've kind of like slapped me across the face as I have, you know, been reviewing everything. Like you said, my parents sat me down, and I was on a team that had the resources. I remember my first junior nationals, I was the only person on my team to make it. And they bought me a new tech suit, basically knew everything. And those are the type of resources I'm talking about, like being able to show up at a meet on the same playing field, on the same level as everyone else. Right. And not showing up in, you know, just a regular swimsuit, being able to show up in that tech suit and being able to have the parka to stay warm, and to have the name on my bag to make me feel like I belong. Like I have the same stuff as everyone else. I'm on the same playing level. And that's a really big thing mentally, because when you show up at meets, I remember showing up at my first meet in Dallas. I had an aqua blade that wasn't to my knees. It was just like a regular swimsuit.
I remember those. Oh
yeah,
my
gosh. They were good for like one
it.
swim. Yeah, they were good for one swim. And once you got out after warm up, it was over with. But I was racing girls who had like the latest and greatest knee skins. And so when you talk about stuff like that, and you talk about the resources to fly you to a meet, entries, hotel, food, all of that, and to do that over and over in a season, it gets expensive. And, you know, you have parents who are single parents, you have parents who are trying to get their kids to and from practice and pay for all these things. And so with my platform, I'm just trying to figure out how can we help with the resources, because it's like when a kid learns how to swim, then they have to get on a swim team. And obviously, I mean, it's 2022 and everything is so expensive now. So it's like, how do we help them continue to stay on this team and make them feel like they're on the same playing field as everyone else? And I know, like, back in my club, I mean, Midland is a very rich area. It's all oil, but you still have a mother. Like, I know of a story of a mother who has 4 kids and they have to take turns going to meets because it's just so expensive. And it's, you know, it's those types of stories where I'm like, oh, I really want to help these people, because you never know who can come from that. There could be the next Olympian that is in that family, but you would never know, because they can't consistently get to a swim meet. And also when they get there, they don't feel like they belong. And as we know in elite sports, like, it's really all mental at the end. You know, everyone's physically there. Like, you can't really do much more physically. It's really, how are you at that moment in time for that 3 days, or that one moment, or that one race? So, like, that's one thing that I've really been thinking about, how I can help. But obviously it's such a widespread, full of variable issue. But yeah, that's a long-winded answer, but yes.
It was so good though. I appreciate that. That was, yeah.
And just to
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. Just to give reference for anyone who isn't familiar with the competitive side of swimming, like a tech suit, as Natalie was saying, that's a good couple of $100s. And you know, the price ranges, and even the aqua blades, which throws me back to when I was about 10, and I'm sure we all had a time in that, but those are still more expensive than a training suit. And so there's certainly a big variety in that price range. And some of the tech suits now can be, I mean, above $400, and we're speaking US dollars. So it's certainly expensive.
Yeah, tech suits now are like no less than $400, but your usage out of them is maybe 4 to 5 swims. So like a meet, pretty much. And so that's one. I mean, I personally, I'm thankful to be sponsored by a suit company, but I still think it's ridiculous. I'm like, how is this suit only lasting like 2 swims? You know, like to mentally feel like you're on the same playing level. You're like, I don't want to wear a suit 5 times. When you see that it's not working anymore, you're like, no, I need to put on a new one. And so I can't imagine showing up to an elite event, 1, being the only person of color, and 2, looking at my suit and being like, this isn't on the same playing field as everyone else, and expecting myself to swim at the best of my ability.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks for explaining that.
Yeah, I mean, I think Natalie had some really great points, you know, and I think too, even though it's like challenging and there's, you know, it's very expensive to be a competitive swimmer, I think there's still a lot of opportunities when it comes to learn to swim. And you think about like your community support, and we mentioned it earlier, like how amazing would it be for swimming to be part of school curriculum
one day.
One day. And there's a couple cities out there that support that, you know, and I think it's just a matter of like, how do we share back, you know, the impact that that's having on kids and the impact that it's having on communities, and not just with the drowning rates, but just in general, like you're supporting and uplifting and empowering an entire community of children that's going to have a thriving future, right? Like swimming, I think for me, swimming kind of gave me a lot of life lessons that carried throughout, that still carry with me today. But just the opportunities that swimming does offer is pretty amazing. I think to Natalie's point, it's trying to figure out like, how do we support that competitive journey as well, especially knowing that it's so challenging financially.
Yeah.
But it definitely shouldn't deter from learning to swim, right? Like that's that first initial our initial goal, right, is to reduce the drowning rates. And a lot of those drowning rates happen to kids who have never had formal swim lessons. And it even happens to adults too, unfortunately. So
Yeah.
It's about education. It's about getting your community leaders, you know, and I wouldn't even say convincing them, but showing them, here are the statistics, you know, and here's the impact that we could do and help our communities thrive. And then hoping that community will provide the financial support too, because I mean, even learn to swim lessons are expensive. I have 2 kids. I have an 8 and a 10-year-old, and I remember, you know, when they started swimming, I was like, how much are lessons? Like that was ridiculous. Like I couldn't believe that I had to pay so much money for learn to swim lessons. But you know, I know that there's a lot of grants out there, a lot of partnerships. Again, I'm gonna scream about Swim 1922. We're able to offer a lot of those swim lessons and that introduction to learn to swim, and hopefully provide the knowledge and the resources to get formal swim lessons and to get them reduced at a reduced cost if needed, right? And I think we have to start somewhere. I don't think that we can sit here and solve every single problem. Financial is definitely a huge barrier, but there's also a lot of others that we can only tackle. You know, we have to like bite down and break down the barriers little by little, because that little is what's going to make a difference.
Right. It's in your community, right? It's like doing the work in your community.
And I think too, those communities that are doing a great job, share with other communities. I mean, we're talking about, Natalie had mentioned earlier, I'm just going to throw out to another example, but Natalie had thrown out earlier about the Black History Meet which actually just happened last week in DC. There's also a National Black Heritage Meet in North Carolina, and that's usually around Memorial Weekend. And it's the same thing, 1,000 Black kids who all come together and have a great time and see other Black kids that are also doing the same thing that they're doing, competitive swim. But how do we get them to broaden how many other Black History meets we could have. Like, why is there only one during Black History Month and one in May? Like can't we have more? And then also just having the support as well from USA Swimming to show like how important it is to have out the competitive population reflect our society, right?
Totally. And speaking of resources, I actually saw your conversation, Maritza, about Soul Cap, and it just on Thursday night, Shazak spoke with a creator and founder of a company called Category 5, which is providing really similar swim caps for African American women with hair that doesn't fit in a regular swim cap. And it was really awesome to watch your conversation with that. And then Shazak spoke with Erin, the founder of this other organization providing similar products and resources. And that was so, it's so powerful because, you know, like I mentioned, I swim, not like these amazing two humans, but my hair always fit in my swim cap. And I had really long hair, but my hair did always fit in my swim cap, and I didn't have to give that two thoughts. And it's not fair that on top of everything else, we have swimmers who have to worry about their hair fitting in a swim cap. That's something that, you know, people like me, I didn't have to think about that. And so we have these amazing companies who are building products to support the diverse community getting in the water, or even if it's just on the learn to swim level, you know, some women don't like to get their hair wet and that sort of thing, and they should have the option, if they've just gone and got their hair done, to keep their hair dry, because the swim caps that I wear wouldn't be adequate. And that is a big thing, and it was super powerful. And Shazak, you may want to speak to your conversation that you had the other night a little more, but I just wanted to mention that resource. And I think that, you know, those types of conversations about creating a more common place for those products in our swimming world, not only at the learn to swim level, but through to competition level. People are different, and we're not talking about the illegal tech suits going down to the ankles with the zippers. We're not talking about advantages like that. We're talking about someone being able to keep their hair in their swim cap. And I think that is just it's just one of those other resources. And as you were saying, it just sort of popped into my mind.
Well, I just think it's interesting for you as a swimmer, Tosh, that like it's not something you even thought of. And so that's really, you know, why these conversations are important. I think, you know, as we have other swimmers and just, you know, people understanding what other people are going through or dealing with, you know, and even just like you said, Natalie, people not speaking to you immediately, like, how does that make one feel? Like people, you know, we need to just be at that level playing ground, as humans, regardless of swimming, not trying to take it away from swimming, but just in general to understand what struggles people are having that we don't even consider. It's not something you ever consider, Tosh, you know? Yeah. And like, also, I think it's a big reason why a lot of Black people don't want it. Women in particular don't want to get in the water. I just got my hair done. Like, I'm not trying to mess it up. Like, you know, I do the curly style occasionally as well, but you know, it's that is a barrier because it does take us a little bit longer to do our hair, you know, it is a thing. So I just think, you know, you even bringing that up and understanding that that's something you didn't consider someone else might have an issue with is huge.
Yeah, I mean, and just going into the resources too, like, I think that's where you think about the equity of swim, right? Like everybody's different, everybody's challenges are different, but like, how do we provide those additional support where needed, whether it's providing additional financial support, or maybe it's providing a ride to the pool, like providing a system that gets you, a transportation system that gets you to a pool to learn how to swim. Maybe it's access to more lifeguards. Maybe there's a pool that's not open because they don't have a lifeguard certification program. I mean, it could be a million different reasons, but the idea is to really consider, like, what are those resources and how do we bring them to forward, right? You think about the Soul Cap, and that's a big barrier, right? Like, for Learn to Swim, a Black woman may not consider swimming because they don't want to get their hair wet, but if there's a resource, they might reconsider that thought. Same thing with, like, you know, taking care of your hair, right? Like, how do we provide, like, here's different hair care products that Natalie uses or that I use, that could help support that journey, and saying, like, well, I don't know how to take care of my hair. Well, here, let me tell you a little bit about how I take care of my hair. Same thing with skin. chlorine is not our friend for anybody.
No.
But I can tell you, I go through lotion like crazy when I was swimming. So like, how do we, say like, here's some of my favorite products, and making sure that like you get out the pool, even as a learned swimmer, get out the pool, rinse off, put some lotion on immediately, because you will walk out just feeling crusty and gross. But there's just, let's keep those resources forward, and there's solutions. And I think my biggest hiccup with the Soul Cap is it's not necessarily that every competitive swimmer is going to be using that cap, but it's a resource for some, right? And that's for some to keep them in the sport longer, or maybe it's even a resource to give them the I have all these excuses for not swimming. Well, a swim cap is not going to be that reason that you're not going to learn how to swim.
I want to be somewhat aware of the time, right? Because we have 20 minutes left. So I just want to throw it out to the anyone who's watching. If you do have any questions, you can put them in the chat. And I do want to like do a baby transition too, because I'm super interested in, just the focus of being an Olympic like athlete. Like, you talked about like the mental space and all of that. So I would love to like hear a little bit about that as well, just, because that's inspiring, I think, for all of us, just to understand your dedication and everything that you have to do. So throw your questions in the chat. And then I just want to give a quick shout, because if you guys go to Natalie's Instagram, she actually has a cute little reel of her like after self-care. It's so cute. So
Thank you.
I saw that the other day. I was like, anyway,
Thank you.
Yeah. So that's another little way to get resources. So again, throw your questions, and then Tosh, I'll kind of turn it over to you if you have like, since you are the swimmer and
was
good job, but still just, the mentality of getting into that headspace.
Yeah, I think, I obviously knew of both of you coming from the swimming world, but did a little more research as well. And a big part that stood out is, I'll speak to you first, Natalie, you took a break for a while and you started to try and redefine your life as a post swimmer, and a lot of swimmers do understand that challenging transition. But then it seemed like you had some time, and apparently you were building super cool apps on your phone, on phones or something, and that sounds pretty amazing. But you obviously came back to swimming, had time to grow, nailed it at trials, and then nailed it at the Olympics last year. Could you maybe speak a little bit to how do you feel you were different as an athlete more recently as opposed to prior to temporarily leaving the sport? I know you mentioned that quarantine was quite a powerful time for you, especially reflecting on your journey. Was any part of it sort of that, because I know for me as an athlete, I did used to get quite nervous, and I remember specifically the meet where I was the most self-confident, and I wish I had had more meets like that. Have you had any journeys in terms of the confidence or trust or that sort of thing?
Yeah, I feel like, honestly, I've had so many different versions of myself since I took a break until now. And I even feel like in Gainesville, I've changed a lot as well. But yeah, I took a break in 2016, and it was a 2-year break, just shy of 2 years. And I would say I learned a lot about myself, but for me, the mental break of just having to like there's the day-to-day pressures that you have, like, are you eating enough? Are you drinking enough? Are you sleeping enough? Are you doing this? I have to do, like, just all of the extra stuff that comes with balancing school and balancing swimming. Like, I think I was just very burnt out. So the break for that reason was really nice. I just got to figure out what I liked and what I didn't like. And I think that's really important, but it's important to note, like, you do lose your identity, because like if you start swimming at 6 and you stop swimming at 22, like that is your identity. And people can say that you need to figure out what you need to do before you stop swimming, but you're 22, like you're still a kid. And so I didn't have anything figured out, and not that I needed to have anything figured out, but I mean, there was a period of time where I just like didn't know what I wanted to do. And that's such an unsettling feeling that I know a lot of people who stop swimming, they kind of go through. But a lot of my being lost was just because I knew I wasn't done. So In going back to the sport, I went back to Georgia and trained there, and I was there up until December of last year. And I learned a lot about myself. I mean, when I went back to swimming, I promised myself I would do absolutely nothing the same that I did before I stopped.
Wow.
Obviously, that didn't work. So, like, I really relied heavily on meditation, and I started that, but I also really got into it in quarantine, just because, I mean, there'd be days where I would be at home, which I love home, by the way. That's just like my place to reground. My parents and I have an amazing relationship, and it's their retirement home. So pretty much anything you could want is in the house. So it's like, we really didn't have to go anywhere. But I can't lie. I mean, there'd be days where I would wake up and I'd be like, I don't even know if I don't make the team after all of this, I'm going to go into a depression. But then, like, your perspective starts to kick in. And by the time I showed up to trials, and even in the lead up, like, I was so abnormally calm, because I'm not that type of person. I don't have much patience, and I like to, like, I'm very quick on things. I have a very short attention span. And so for me to say that I feel really calm, like, in the middle of trials, is just so abnormal. But at that point, I had done everything that I could do. And there's no stone that was not unturned by the time I got to trials. And so I think that's kind of what attributed to having such a good meet there, and then just carrying that mentality and that mentality of being grateful for every moment, because I had been out of the sport and I've seen the other side of it. So when things get hard, I'm like, well, it could be worse. And so, yeah, that's how the mentality that I took into the games. And I noticed sometimes, like, some of my teammates would get mad at small things, which is fair, because we're at the Olympics. Like, there's so much tension, like, everywhere. You have like 1,500 athletes who are all trying to get a gold medal, and you're not all going to get a gold medal. And so it's understandable that there's a lot of tension, but I really tried to remind myself in times of just tension and anxiety, and the night before I'm gonna swim, like, just to have perspective and to be like, hey, like, there's literally nothing else you can do. And so that's kind of the mentality that I had been working towards and building towards when I moved to Georgia. And I learned a lot. I can't say I did it all by myself. My parents helped me, my coaches helped me. My teammates, Melanie Margalis and Olivia Smiliga, were two very important people to help me realize, like, it's good to take from, I trained with amazing people. I think we had like 6 people make the team out of the group that I was in. And so obviously every day I'm training with amazing people. So it took a while for me to kind of find my own, like, footing. So I just took the good points that each of them had and tried to turn it into my own. And I think that's what, helped work out for my benefit.
That's so awesome. I know. So the meditation part, I often use Calm, which is an app. Is there any specific?
Yeah, that's what I use.
Oh, look at that. It's so good.
Yeah.
Free shout out to Calm.
Yes, free shout out.
It's great. And I think that that's such a huge learning curve for athletes, is taking what you can and can't control, is sort of what I was hearing from a lot of what you're saying. And I know that I didn't perfect that. I certainly didn't. And it's easy to talk about it when you're out of it. So I commend you for going through this journey and continuing to grow, because you're on this call, you're the swimmer that's still swimming, and that's so incredible. And so it's amazing to hear that journey. And it's, I think, relieving for any young swimmers. I know we shared this with a lot of clubs too, and any young swimmers out there, it's okay to be nervous. And like, Natalie, I'm sure you used to get nervous, and you used to maybe get flustered over those small things that you mentioned that your teammates didn't get flustered over. And it's a journey to get to that mindset that you've achieved, right? Like, it's been a long journey for you to get here.
Yeah, it definitely takes patience, which I don't have, but I think that's the one other thing in my life besides swimming that I just decided to stick with. I'm usually a cyclic person, so I'll get interested in something and then I'll, like, put it to the wayside and get interested again. But I think it took about 1.5 years for, like, meditation to actually kick in, when not like when I called upon it, but for it to become like a second nature type of thing. Like, for a situation like the finals at Olympic trials, like, you have to be able to understand how you feel, but know that, like, that's not actually, like, gonna determine how you swim. Like, you just feel like that. But like, it's important to be able to calm yourself down. But I'm 100% either for Calm or Headspace. Those are some resources that USA Swimming provides. And yeah, so those are, I don't like push meditation on people, but I just like, it really does work for me.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
And Maritza, I would love to hear like what your process was like.
Very, very interesting, a little bit crazy. So one thing about me is I grew up just in a different environment where I didn't really talk about my feelings and kind of kept everything to myself. Like I mentioned, that mom who said that sideways comment to me, I didn't tell anybody about it. If I was nervous about something, I didn't really say anything. I had a lot of parent pressure. Like my dad would really lean in on me if I didn't win. I mean, even at a young age, or if I didn't come home with an A from school, like he would really lean in. And I really got to the point where I just would go to my room and cry for hours. Like that was just part of my routine, essentially. And it wasn't until I got a lot older when I started to realize like I'm dealing with a lot of pressure. I mean, in 2000, I didn't make the Olympic team, and that was my ultimate goal. I watched 96 Olympic Games and I was like, oh, I want to be an Olympian. I'm going to do it in 2000. And I had trained all those years and was definitely slated. A lot of media was coming out about me making the team, and that pressure got to me. Even on the pool deck, walking on the pool deck and not knowing what to expect. I'd never been to Olympic trials, and it usually if you haven't been to a swim meet before, you're able to be on the pool deck with your teammates, and your parents are really close, and your coaches are right there. When you go to Olympic trials, it's completely different. The only people that are allowed on the pool deck are the officials, which there's two for every lane, I guess, one on each side, and then the coaches aren't even on the pool deck. Like you can't even go walk over to the side of the pool after your race and talk to them. You have to go like off the pool deck down to the warm down area and do all that. So very nerve-wracking event. So I got very, very nervous, but I also didn't know how to handle it either. Like I just internalized it and just took it as like, this is it. I'm just nervous. And then it wasn't until like after I didn't make the Olympic team and my dad laid in on me. Like he told me I was an embarrassment to the family. He was really disappointed that I didn't make the Olympic team. And it was at that point where I went through major depression and I got professional help. And I think that's where, for me, mentally, it started to change of, I can't take on all this pressure and I can't keep it to myself all the time. Right. So like just being able to, not necessarily that I need to call 800 million people and be like, hey, this is what's going on in my mind, but it was, how do I find an outlet for myself? Whether it's some people it's writing it down in a journal. For some people, it's calling their go-to person and just saying like, here's how I'm feeling. For others, it's just, staying in a corner and calming themselves down or listening to music. I mean, it could be a myriad of things that you can do. But for me, it was just, I had to get that professional help and really understand like what was it that I went through in my childhood that is kind of preventing me from excelling and truly being myself every time I got up on the pool deck. And so, I took 4 more years to really think about building my self-confidence. I wasn't swimming for the media. I wasn't swimming for my dad. I was swimming for myself. And this was the journey that the accomplishment that I wanted. And, and then so it eventually happened. Like I got to Olympic trials in 2004 and it was completely different. I wasn't expecting to find my coach on the pool deck. I wasn't expecting to find my parents. I knew the media was still out there, but it didn't let it get to me as much. And then I had some amazing teammates as well. Georgia has been known for having University of Georgia has been known for having a lot of great Olympic athletes come out of that program. And so my year that we were in 2004, I got to train with athletes like Courtney Shealy and Christy Kowal, who are also Olympic medalists, and several others from different countries that made their Olympic teams as well. So that was a huge support for me, is just being able to be around friends who kind of had that positive mindset and were able to kind of push me and encourage me. They may not have known everything that was going on in my life, but they were there to support me just mentally, like keeping me in that positive mindset. So I truly, truly appreciated that. you know, and to this day, still friends with them, you know, like just knowing that that bond has never been broken. And I cherish it for as long, I'll cherish it for as long as I live. But there's definitely a lot of pressures that I have dealt with. But I think for me, the one thing that I always share is that everybody's journey is different. The way that I handle it, a lot of people may not have been able to handle it. You know, for some, it becomes too much. So for me, I just really encourage people to find that outlet that works for them. Like Natalie said, it's for her, it could be meditation, but that might not be something for everybody. Or for some, it's writing it down. You know, for some, it's getting true professional help, downloading an app, whatever it is. Find that outlet that provides that calm, that provides that balance that can allow you to be your true self. So throughout the years, like I still have moments where I don't say how I'm feeling. My husband is really good at like immediately noticing when I'm like internalizing something. So he'll try to get it out of me. And that's been very helpful for us, but it's definitely still been a work in progress. And even in like corporate America, like right now, I work at Carter's Incorporated on the talent development team. And I do have moments where I just keep things to myself, but I know that my voice is important. So just trying to learn, how do I get that confidence to continue to have my voice in any space that I'm in is definitely a challenge, and definitely always a work in progress, and still continues to be a journey for me.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's so important, and not to take it away from swimming, but just mental health in the Black community is also something that we need to raise awareness about as well, because it is, you're just not supposed to be, depression isn't a thing, and it's so real. And anxiety, I think everybody in the world has anxiety, just in my opinion, in little drops of it, you know, but I just appreciate you sharing that, because it doesn't come easy, you know, and like you said, everyone has their own journey. But I think as we all tell our stories and share our stories, there are people that relate to that, right? There's people that tap in. And I mean, yeah, I'm tapping into you just on another, you know, section of my life. And I'm like, girl, I feel you. But we do have a question where, again, we have 4 minutes left. And someone does have a question about her son, who's been a swimmer, looking into coaching. And so just curious if you have any advice for him as he starts to consider coaching.
That's a good one. When I stopped swimming, I started coaching as well. And I started coaching at the club level. I guess advice would be to, like we've been saying, everyone is different. And, you know, you write a set on the board and it is going to be translated in many different ways, depending on who's looking at what set you write for practice. So it's really important, I think, to listen to your swimmers. And I know that's pretty basic advice, but it's much easier said than done. And you know, when you're a coach, it's a beautiful thing. If you're a coach, a teacher, because you're teaching someone something new, and, you know, you become a really important figure in this person's life, you know, for that moment in time and hopefully in the future. So the best advice that I can give is to truly like understand your swimmers, and know how they respond to be able to help them in the best way. I know that was kind of a challenge for me when I was a coach, but it was kind of like a puzzle every day, because, you know, every day that we have is different. Some kids had good days before they came to practice, some had bad. And for me, it was cool because I got to, you know, if someone was having a bad day, and, you know, we could change things and tweak things. And sometimes they just want someone to talk to. I mean, these are kids. So my best advice would be to really just think about how you would want to be approached if you were like in their shoes. And I think that really will help connect you with the swimmer or group of swimmers that you have.
I love that advice, Natalie. I even think about like my coaches, they were like my second dad.
Yeah.
Like,
and you felt okay to like speak to them, I'm assuming.
Yeah, like I think I spent so much time, I mean, just traveling. Like my parents didn't come to my travel meets. It was just me and my coach and my teammates, and just being able to have a great relationship with my coach. I don't think he knew everything that was going on at home, but he was still that positive support. And I think that listening to your athletes is a great advice. And I think too, first off, I think it's amazing that your son, sorry, Chiquita, that your son wants to be a coach, because we don't have a lot of Black coaches on the pool deck, and that is amazing. And I will say, dare to not be part of the norm. Like, don't just do something because somebody else is doing it, and be willing to research and try something different. Like, you know, I always think back at some of the coaches that have been coaches for like 70 plus years, and they still do the same stuff that they did from year one. And where our sport is evolving, our athletes are evolving.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to make sure that you're still doing your research and understanding, like, how can you support the swimmer of today, not necessarily like, yeah, don't totally disregard what was done 70 years ago, but know that there can be more that can be done in 2021. So I think just amazing as a Black, wanting to be a Black coach on the deck, and reach out to other Black coaches that are out there, like Jim Ellis. I know he has a coaching program through USA Swimming, that coaching mentorship program through USA Swimming, that he's going to get moving on soon. And then just others across the country, when you see them, go talk to them and understand what their journey is and what's their best advice. Because I think that's how you build that support network that will keep you in the sport of swimming for years to come. And also understand, like Natalie said, listen to your athletes, because they're going to be evolving. I mean, the things that athletes are dealing with today are not the same as what I was dealing with when I was swimming. So both great advice right there.
This is so off topic, but Maritza and I both had the same coach at Georgia, and his name was Jack, and he's like a legendary coach. And like, us talking about coaches made me think of him, because he is like a perfect example of someone who listens to their athletes. Like, Jack is not a yeller. He's probably Maritza's like 5'2", 5'3".
On a good day.
Like, he'd be so mad if I said that. But he's a short guy. He's just one of those people where he's not a yeller, and like, when he walks on deck, like, you just are better. Like, he just has that about him. And so I think one of the things that makes him a really, really great coach and has given him so much success. I mean, he just finished, I think, his 6th Olympic team this past year.
So amazing.
Yeah, and it was just so nice to go through that with him, going to trials, being at camp, and going through the games, because he just keeps calm and like, in any situation. And I'm sure Maritza can say the same, like, and you know, in a high pressure situation such as trials, like, I'd show up every session and I would seek out and find him. And every day he would tell me a story that was absolutely crazy. Like, the story was like, he was like, you can ask whoever. Like, it just didn't seem like he was telling the truth, but he would tell me a story that had nothing to do with swimming, to just like dissipate the tension. Yeah. And I think that's one example of what made him a really good coach, is that he understands that, like, the situation that we're in at trials is not life or death. It's, you know, it's really, really, really important, but like, he really teaches you things, and he allows you to, like, it gives you that space to feel comfortable to be like, Jack, I'm nervous. And then he'll just like give you a story and he'll help you through it. But he's not saying, well, you shouldn't be nervous, you shouldn't do this. He's calm. He has a calm approach. And so I think that's really important as well as a coach. Like, your swimmers are going to feed off of you. And so if you're uptight and you're, you know, really snippy, really tight, like, that's going to make them feel the same way. So yeah, Jack is very calm. He's very full of confidence. And I think that's why he's so successful in the sport.
And he's gone through so many Olympic cycles. And so it speaks to Maritza's point of, he was a coach however many years ago during Maritza's Olympic cycle in 2004. And that the swimming has changed, the sport has changed, things around the sport have changed, things at the elite level of all athletes have changed drastically over those years. And he's continued to adapt, which is so amazing. And for you to both speak so highly of him at different times of your careers, you know, 20 years apart almost. And that's so cool. And he certainly, deserves the credit. That's so amazing. That's so cool to hear such athletes speaking so highly of the coaches, because you don't always hear that. Right.
Yeah.
It takes a village, it sounds like, in swimming for sure.
Yeah.
Right. I just want to say, I feel like I've learned so much just from this conversation, and it's just, there's so many takeaways, things to consider, things to think about. And I even just think it's personal responsibility and what we can do in our own communities to not only just be a representative, for moving things forward, but just, I totally messed that up, but that's okay. Bottom line, I loved it. I appreciate you all. We just appreciate the time. And thank you to everyone who showed up as well. And I hope that we can, I don't know, do this again, like next year, I don't know, May, Water Safety Month. Either way, super appreciate you all and all that you've done for swimming and just the sport and for Black, swimmers as well.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having us. And big shout out to Sigma Gamma Rho sorority. I see a lot of you in the chats. Both Natalie and I are members, and just super excited to see the support there too. So thank you guys.
I love
Thank
that.
you guys.
And then, yeah, everyone, just a quick No More Under, it's nomoreunder.org. If you want to check that out. And then does everyone you want to say your socials? Though I imagine so many people know your socials. You can just look everybody's name up on Instagram and check that out.
Awesome.
All right.
Well, thank you, ladies.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for your time. We hugely appreciate it. Have a wonderful
bye.
weekend.
Bye.
Have a good weekend.
You too.
too.